Hi, this is Billie Jean King.
This is Marion Bartoli.
This is Bianca Andreescu.
I'm Mats Wilander.
This is Mary Carrillo.
This is Pam Schreiber.
This is Yannick Noah, and you're listening to the Tennis Podcast.
Well, hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast on day one of Roland Garros 2025. It is 9:45 in the evening. Play is still going on court Philippe Chatrier, and we, myself, Catherine Whitaker, David Law and Matt Roberts, are in our usual spot, just in the shadow of court Philippe Chatrier. There are people milling about around us. There's still an extraordinary amount of daylight in the air because it's just that time of day, and I am clad mercifully in a free T-shirt because apparently I packed terribly for this trip, and there's barely been a single moment where I've felt the appropriate temperature. But Matt had one of the 15,000 free T-shirts distributed to the crowd in Philippe Chatrier earlier to honour the 14-time French Open champion Rafael Nadal. And while I mocked the journalists that were wearing their orange T-shirts, here I am wearing Matt's orange T-shirt because I packed terribly for this trip and it's keeping me from being cold. It is with Nadal's retirement ceremony where we are going to start tonight. But first, I should update the people on the big saga. So many people will be tuning in purely for the latest instalment of Will Matt get stood up by Amanda Anisimova for 3 days in a row. And folks, I'm going to do a tease. Please know that an update is coming later in the show. Now, Rafael Nadal, 14-time French Open champion, of course, exited here last year in his final competitive Roland Garros in the first round after that horror draw during the then second seed Alexander Zverev, putting on a decent show, but in the end exiting Philippe Chatrier in that shaft of sunlight with just a wave, having informed the tournament organisers that he didn't want any kind of ceremony in that moment. Of course, after he played his final competitive match in doubles at the Davis Cup finals in Malaga last year, there was a ceremony to honour Rafael Nadal. Matt and I were there. I thought it was quite nice. I shed a tear. I thought it was fine. Spanish people felt very differently about that. And in fact, they are, quotes have still been coming out today. There was an interview with Alejandro Davidovich Fekina in Clay magazine this week where he was criticising the ceremony, said it was sad and not fitting of a legend. A reminder, at the time, Carlos Moya was variously quoted, depending on your Spanish translation, as calling the Malaga ceremony shabby, tacky or stingy. And Uncle Tony said it should have been a more dynamic ceremony. So a tough scene for Malaga and the ITF. And the big question today, I guess, is did the FFT and Roland Garros get this one right? I watched on a screen. David and Matt, you watched in the stadium from the press seats up in the gods. One of you was clad in orange, one of you not. No need to go into details. Did they get it right?
Personally, I think overall, yes. Did I agree with every decision that they made in the ceremony? No. I think there was quite a long time when Nadal was standing on his own in the middle of the court, like he was in Malaga, which seemed to be the big criticism of that. And
he had a lectern this time.
Yes, and it just felt like we'd seen that bit before. We'd had that. Nadal obviously had written a speech that he had stuff that he wanted to say in French, in English and in Spanish, so they obviously allowed him the time to do that. Personally, I thought there was just a little bit too much of Nadal on his own there in the middle, but I also thought there were some great moments within the ceremony as a whole, and the whole thing had gravitas and a sense of occasion. The T-shirts worked. It looked amazing inside Philippe Chatrier. Most were in sort of orange clay-coloured T-shirts, but some were in white as well, and they spelled out Rafa at the top of the stadium. I thought it looked impressive. I think it's come out really well in the images as well. And then there were these little moments throughout that I thought were, the kind of iconic moments that I hope for in a ceremony. Mark Moray, the MC here, introducing Nadal in the way he always used to introduce him onto court, listing the years that he won Roland Garros, a favourite event of every Roland Garros for me. I thought we'd heard it for the last time last year. I was thrilled that we got it today. It gives me goosebumps every time. There was, of course, the absolutely epic moment where onto the screen appeared backstage the other members of the Big Four, Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic and Andy Murray. And I gasped at that moment when they were all standing there ready to come on. I thought that was an iconic moment. And then they revealed that there was like an extra thing that they'd done for Nadal, which I was hoping that they would do. I said it yesterday. He's already got his statue here. I just wanted there to be something else. I know there's already a pista Rafa Nadal. It's very hard. You don't want to disrespect the Musketeers and rename the trophy. Things have already got a name. It's hard to rename stuff. And what they came up with was unveiling a plaque on the court, which they swept away the clay to unveil it, and it was Rafael Nadal's footprint and the trophy and the number 14 to signal how many times he's won this tournament. And look, I think it's very hard to know what to do, but I'm glad they did something. I think it's pretty cool. There's a permanence to it. Sort of Nadal's achievements here are kind of immortal, and there's an immortality to that being part of the court here at Roland Garros. So I liked that moment as well. So I thought in that sense there were these real highs in among a ceremony that at times felt like maybe we've seen this before. And also there were the moments when Nadal teared up talking about Uncle Tony, his iconic grandmothers in their 90s got great cheers as well, which I really, really enjoyed. Like things like that. So personally, I think being in the stadium probably did help. I know there was a lot of criticism of commentators on the broadcast, talking over it and maybe missing some of the moments, but I think it worked in the stadium, and I think there was a lot of people in that stadium who I think were pretty emotional and pretty pleased to be here.
David?
Yeah, I share most of what Matt feels about it, and I think the thing is, he explained in his press conference afterwards how uncomfortable he usually feels when he's the centre of attention if it's not for hitting a ball. He says, I am still quite shy. And there were moments where I looked at him and I thought, oh dear, he just wants this over, because even when he's getting this absolute standing ovation, because it goes on and on and on and on, he didn't know what to do with himself, really. He's just a little self-conscious, I think. But, equally, I think he felt it was important to do it, and he said as much in his press conference. I'm glad that I had the chance to do this, and it was the right time. Everything about him was him at peace with his decision and feeling that I want to do this because I want to sort of show my appreciation to a lot of people, all the people that had been working backstage with him, drivers and people that had organised things for him over the last 20 years, the crowd, the French public, with whom he's not always had the easiest relationship, because they got Rafa fatigue, frankly, for a number of years. They didn't necessarily appreciate him for a period as much as perhaps he would have hoped, but they fell in love with him at the end. And it's a relationship that he's clearly just wanted to give them respect back, hence him speaking in French, which isn't his most comfortable language. But what struck me more than anything, and I've seen this throughout decades of working with players on the Champions Tour, they're most at ease with each other. And the moment that Federer came out, particularly Federer, I think Murray as well, and to an extent Djokovic. I don't think he and Djokovic will ever be really close, but there's an appreciation of what each other has meant to one another. But I still feel like you suddenly saw the real man there, the man who's sort of just comfortable with his peers, and they breathe that rarefied air of having won more than anybody else in the men's game ever has. And I liked the touches, and I thought it was pretty cool, even if it did seem to go on forever.
Maybe it's the difference of having been in the stadium and not. It was obviously a highly in-demand event, and we, the Tennis Podcast, were only given 2 tickets to be in the press seats to watch it. So I watched it down in the media centre. And look, I agree with all the takes. I found those moments that you described just as impactful. I audibly gasped at the reveal of Federer, Murray and Djokovic, and I knew they were going to be there. But the way they did it with the video messages that glitched and then the cut to them all standing there backstage, that was masterful. That was absolutely beautifully done and iconic, and I loved the moments with them walking onto court and the embrace. I just feel like they should have done that right at the start. Cut all of the stuff with him stood there in the middle at a lectern like he was giving a keynote address.
Yeah, I agree with you on this.
And that was the majority of it. I know we'll remember the moments, but there was 30 minutes there of Nadal stood there delivering a load of thank yous, which were lovely, but I thought this was about us appreciating him, or the tournament appreciating him, and him standing there thanking all the people close to him that presumably he's thanked quite profusely in private, over the years. I thought that was a real misfire, especially given the fact that him standing alone in the middle of the court was what was so roundly criticised about, or one of the elements that was so roundly criticised about Malaga. So, look, I'm sure in the fullness of time we'll just remember the moments, and they really were great. The T-shirts, the visuals, that worked. The interpretive dance didn't.
Yeah, that was an odd
Not sure anyone will remember that in the fullness of time.
Wasn't sure what was happening, to be honest.
There was a great moment when the camera cut to Nadal watching the interpretive dance, and the director obviously went, "No, cut away from that. His face isn't quite doing what we want it to do." But yeah, I feel like I don't know. I'm still, for the moment, remembering the 30 minutes of Nadal delivering a speech on his own in the middle with a random lectern that I thought was a bit odd.
Yeah, and look, I agree with that. I just have to think that Nadal wanted to speak. I can't imagine that they, as you said, David, he's not all that comfortable doing it. I can't imagine they forced him to do it.
No, and there was afterwards you could see him chatting, not quite backstage, but in the sort of holding pen area with Amelie Mauresmo, and she was anxiously checking, was it okay? Was that what you wanted? And I'm sure he wouldn't have said, no, it was crap. But, he was reassuring her that he loved it and it was exactly what he wanted. And there was a gorgeous clip that came out that for me was better than anything during the actual ceremony, but because of how wonderful this clip was of Rafa with his son, getting his son to give each of the big three, the fellow big four members, a high five. And it was, that's just absolute gold, isn't it? It was so special.
I also thought Hannah came up with a great suggestion for what the ceremony could have been, which was all of his opponents that he's beaten at Roland Garros giving him a guard of honour onto the court. I would have really enjoyed that. And she said, people he's beaten twice having to run to the back and extend the guard of honour. You have to be in it the number of times you've been beaten here.
And then Robin Soderling walks out, or is sort of carried out on a throne by some greased up gladiator type people. Look, I realise it was a very special thing to have been here for, and if Rafa's happy, then fine. More than fine. Lovely. I did just have, and we'll come on to talk about the press conference, which David was in, and which sounds like it was, I listened into big chunks of it, and it sounds like it was absolutely brilliant. But I didn't pay attention to all of it because it coincided with kind of the best part of the day, tennis-wise, the part of the day where it finally felt like round one of a slam, like, oh, there's lots happening and I don't quite have enough screens. I was waiting for that feeling all day, and part of it was the slightly soft launch order of play today. Part of it was the rain, but, you know, it took a while to heat up today, and finally we got that, and everybody's bandwidth was being occupied by Rafael Nadal, and it just didn't quite feel right, that, to me. And I don't, if we've learned anything over the last few months and years, it's that I'm not sure there is a perfect way to do these retirement ceremonies for either the player or for the tournament or for the crowds. There's no perfect solution, so I don't want to criticise them too hard. But with the benefit of hindsight, I wonder if yesterday might have been the day for it. Yannick Noah Day, kind of unofficially Kids Day, cheap tickets, the T-shirt thing would have. Imagine you come on a cheap ticket on Kids Day and you get the Nadal ceremony. It could have been absolutely centre stage yesterday. And I know the answer to why it wasn't yesterday was probably TV. You know, the TV broadcast of the tournament didn't start till today, and I'm sure all the broadcasters wanted to show that, although the coverage I was watching, they cut away from it quite a lot. So maybe not, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I do just wonder if yesterday would have been a more appropriate setting for it. But it does sound like it was a barnstorming press conference, David.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to feel about it like I did. It was one of those where you mentioned how many tickets we got to go in the stadium. We had one between the three of us to actually be able to attend this press conference. I was the lucky one to be able to do that. I was about 4 rows back. It was rammed, and my word, it was hot in there. But he very quickly made you forget about all that, because he was just so open and so at ease and so kind of comfortable and content to be there and chat, really, and answer questions and make jokes. I mean, there was one great line. I don't quite know what brought it up, but he said, I hadn't heard from Andy Murray for quite some time, some months, in fact. And then the night that Arsenal played Real Madrid, I got a text from Andy Murray 1 second after the match finished when Arsenal had beaten Real Madrid, and it said, "Hi Rafa, just wanted to check in on you and see how you're doing." And
so Andy Murray, isn't it?
And he said for about 5 seconds I thought, oh, it's nice to hear from him. Oh, he's doing that. The British, he said, the British humour. It was just things like that, just lovely little moments in the press conference. Some very significant ones. You know, sometimes you ask a player to pick out a greatest moment of their career and they really struggle or they don't want to. Well, he was asked which one of the 14 Roland Garroses will you remember, and he was very specific. He said 2006 was maybe the most emotional, and if you think that's when he was still a teenager, that was his second one, and it's because he'd had the foot problem which kept him out of the Australian Open. It sounds like that was a real worry for him back then, real lots of doubts, and of course he beat Federer in the final that year. He said the best I ever played was 2008, but the most I ever suffered was 2022, the last one he ever won.
Zombie foot year.
The zombie foot year, yeah. He was asked about retirement, and he said nothing will ever match the adrenaline, but kind of that's okay. It doesn't mean I can't be happy. And I asked him, do you think you'll need to find a way to engage your competitive spirit again in your life, because that characterised your career so much? And he said, to be honest, for the first 6 months of this year, or 5 months of this year, I didn't have any competitiveness. I would play golf and I didn't feel competitive, and I didn't like it. I felt really strange, it wasn't a nice feeling to me. But the good news is I've got it again, he said. And, he said, I think a life without goals is not something I want to live, but, it'll never be the same, but I've got the competitive spirit back, whether I'm playing golf or whatever I'm doing. I mean, obviously, I'm curious as to whether he will maybe want to become a Davis Cup captain one day or something like that. But he did seem really content to me.
How soon before Andy Murray and Rafael Nadal are seen on a golf course together? being overly competitive.
Do you know, I'm stunned we haven't had that content already, actually, yeah. He did say something, didn't he, to Federer, Murray and Djokovic during the ceremony, which was kind of along the lines of, our legacy in this sport is set. Let's, continue to try and do good things in the sport and, continue to try and contribute to the sport. And look, Murray's already gone back into the sport after retiring and been a coach, and we're still kind of, Federer's obviously got the Labour Cup, but I think, I don't know, maybe I'd expect a little bit more from Federer in terms of when he said that line about I'll love you and I'll never leave you. I thought maybe we would.
He meant exclusively the Labour Cup and its promotion.
It does.
We didn't realise at the time.
Yeah, it does appear so at the moment. But I just think maybe with Nadal, maybe at this point now, and having said that, maybe we're going to get something more from.
There's an exhibition tour
Nadal.
coming between those two.
Oh yeah, I think it's already.
Yeah. It feels like
you're already ready to go.
Yeah.
Just last couple of things on Andy Murray. Number one, I'm really glad that he is justifiably being included in all these type of ceremonies. There is a world in which these ceremonies are big three.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who would think that it should be.
I said that to David coming out. I was like, I'm really glad that Murray was included in this, because if you lived through that era, it was a big fall. It was. That is the hill that Matt Roberts will die on. Absolutely. Because
he didn't win anything. They won 20-something each. He won, 3?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, over the course of the career. There was a period there from 2008 to 2014.
The peak golden period.
The peak golden period where
it was 4.
Murray was winning, as many slams as Federer in that period, pretty much. Federer wasn't winning loads of slams in that period. He won a lot before Djokovic obviously reached his peak, and he then had that late surge at the end of his career. But Murray was constantly there. He was competing with them. He was their rival. He was playing them in the biggest tournaments repeatedly. And the fact that Nadal, Federer and Djokovic all talk about him in the way that they do says it all.
You could tell they all wanted him.
They wanted
absolutely.
him there. They respect him. And look, I don't mean for Stan Wawrinka to catch any strays here, but that's exactly why it's not a big 5 in my book, because it didn't feel weird that Stan Wawrinka wasn't there. But I think maybe they could have done it as the 3. The big 3 is a thing too. That is a hill I will die on too. That is also a thing. But to me, big 5 was never a thing, but big 4 absolutely was. And I'm really pleased that Murray was there, especially as he and Nadal, have the history in terms of being, I think they kind of were friendly, especially early on in their career.
Agreed.
I really think Murray is an important guy for Nadal. So
I agree.
It was important that Murray was there.
It's unquestionably right, I think, that he was there. I would have rioted if he wasn't, but I do think it's really plausible that he wasn't. So well done everybody for him being involved. And it also meant we got to see the incredibly awkward body language between Andy Murray and Novak Djokovic. We were supposed to get Djokovic's press conference today. He's delayed until tomorrow. I don't know how honest he's going to be about the ending of that beautiful friendship.
Yeah, I was more confident that he would be honest before I heard the answer that Matt let me hear from his Geneva press conference, in which he very diplomatically sort of said we've just gone our separate ways. But actually, even within what he said there, I did think that doesn't sound completely. I don't want us to use the word amicable. I don't think there's necessarily been a massive fallout, but that hasn't gone quite as everybody thought it was going to go. It
certainly didn't look like a deepened friendship today, did it?
No. It was funny because when they were first shown up on the screen, that moment where they were revealed, I was just so obsessed with it. I wasn't actually reading too much into it. But then when I actually looked at the photos,
they're leaning away from one another.
The body language experts will have a field day with that.
It's like when, on like dating analysis shows, or when people's feet are pointing away. If you're sitting on a date and your feet are pointing away from them, apparently you're not interested. It was neither of them were interested in one another. No friendships are being deepened today.
Just on the point about sort of when was the appropriate time for this and all of that, because I had similar sort of conflicting thoughts. Like, I found myself simultaneously thinking, I'm such a day one slam person. I want to be in the moment. I want to be experiencing the buzz. I don't really like it when something takes me out of that. But then I also thought, do I not have an hour of my day or longer to, like, celebrate Rafael Nadal and pay tribute to Rafael Nadal? Like, he is the most historic player this tournament has ever seen. Like, and I'm complaining a little bit that this ceremony's going on. Like, I don't know, I just kind of thought we are so guilty of, like, constantly living in the moment and sort of moving on to the next thing, that part of me thought, I really do want to celebrate this moment and this history, and if that takes an hour, then okay, it's going to take an hour.
But it could have taken an hour yesterday.
I don't think it would have been. I don't think it would have felt as impactful if it was before the tournament. Personally, I think maybe there was a world where they didn't used to have a night session, did they? On the Sun, well, ever, but they didn't used to have it on the Sunday. They've reintroduced that. It felt like it should have been the last thing of the day,
or just thrown a big party.
Right. It felt like maybe they
lock in.
I feel like they tried to do both, but I think there was room to give this the space.
All due respect, I take your point. I don't think it's about your day, though. I think it's about a sort of slight disrespect to, like, the tournament and the players that were happening and starting,
maybe they could have scheduled it differently. But I think complaining that it went on too long or whatever is a bit like, in the grand scheme of things, it's not gone on.
I mean, I would say my complaint about it going on too long is that it just felt like it was going on a bit too long.
If it was banger after banger and it went on that long.
But I think Nadal was saying what he wanted to say.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know, I think trying to cut Nadal short. If he didn't want that, he wanted to say what he wanted to say. So you think if he had 3 hours worth of speech to say, he should have been allowed that? What? Yeah, but I mean, like, that's he's not going to have 3 hours worth of speech. He's going to have.
He had a lot.
25 minutes. You know, I don't know. I do take the point. I just think
14 years maybe he's earned it.
Yeah, like we will never see this again.
I am all for him having a big ceremony and it taking up all the time in the world. I just think that could have been done differently.
Yeah,
it's not that I don't have oxygen to give 2 hours of my day to 14-time Roland Garros champion Rafael Nadal. I'm wearing the T-shirt, man. What more do you want from me? I watched the interpretive dance.
We've got photos of the T-shirt.
Okay. Well, having complained about the fact that Rafael Nadal occupied so much of today, we should probably talk about some of the tennis that happened today. We'll do that in part 2. We'll speak to you then. Welcome back to part 2 of the tennis podcast on day 1 of Roland Garros, where the Philippe Chatrier court was opened by the world number 1 and favourite for the women's title, Aryna Sabalenka. She dropped just one game to Kamila Rakimova, 6-1, 6-love. It took 1 hour. And at first glance, this scoreline, I thought, Sabalenka's doing Sabalenka things, you know, in early rounds of slams. And then I saw a comment on the barge that flagged the fact that actually she's not necessarily somebody that dishes out scorelines this one-sided in early rounds of slams, typically. And so I checked the record, and this is the most one. She's only had a scoreline this one-sided once in the last 12 months, and bizarrely that was against Madison Keys at Indian Wells. Before that, the last time she was dishing out bagels and breadsticks was during the Australian swing in 2024 when she won the titles in Brisbane and Melbourne. Now look, this is one match, this is one data point. we'll see how we go in a few rounds' time. But if she keeps dishing out these type of performances, I don't think we should necessarily just go, oh, well, it's early rounds, it doesn't mean anything, because that was all business from Aryna Sabalenka today.
Yeah, and that's what she wants. She wants to stamp her number one footprint on this tournament. She showed it in the press conference. She loves this, and she's ready for everybody. I mean, let's not forget, she might have been going all the way and playing against Swiatek last year had it not been for falling ill in that match against Andreeva. You know, she's not as good maybe on clay as she is on the other surfaces, but I actually think that a similar level is in her, and I think she's maybe getting better as a world number one. I know she lost to Keys, and if she'd have somehow beaten Keys in that Australian Open as well and been on that run, that would have probably felt quite fitting really for her status generally. All credit to Keys, but no, this is exactly what she wants, and I think, yeah, it's going to take something special to stop her.
Zheng Qinwen was next on to Philippe Chatrier. She wasn't particularly troubled by Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, former finalist here. 4-3 for Zheng Qinwen. I didn't see big chunks of this match. I dipped in and out, and what I was struck by every time I looked at the screen was the aura of Zheng Qinwen. She looked to me like she had the demeanour and the gait of a defending champion. Like, in her mind, that Olympic gold medal, that was the last time that she was on Chatrier. She was stood on a podium with gold around her neck. It looked to me like she was channeling that into some serious confidence. And I've always, when I've seen her in person, I remember the first time feeling it was at the United Cup in Perth last year, where I was in the same hotel as her, and I would see her at breakfast, and every time I'd see her up close, I'd be like, woof, wow, she's a different breed, you know, like she's not like us mere mortals. She is some athlete with, and not just the sort of physical stature, something about the poise and the presence and the aura, and I feel like she had that to a greater degree than I've really ever seen before on Chatrier today. Now, again, it's one data point. I don't know what it necessarily means, but it really was striking to me.
Interesting, yeah. Like, you'd like to think that winning the gold medal would have that effect, but you know, might not have been that surprising if it had gone the other way. You know, like the buzz that the stadium had today for that match was absolutely nothing compared to the Olympic final. You know, it was in one of those early slots on the day. Like, it could have felt like a huge come down from the last time she was on Chatrier. So I think it's pretty impressive that she did carry this off against a dangerous opponent. I watched quite a bit of this, and Zheng won 11 of the first 12 points, I think. Like, came out playing really, really well, and I thought maybe it was going to be extremely one-sided, but Pavlyuchenkova did have her moments in this match. When she just finds her range, Pavlyuchenkova, she's so dangerous because she does hit the ball so big and so flat, which is a serious problem, and she got that first set back level, back at 4-all, but then this was then the theme of the match. As soon as Pavlyuchenkova would break back or get it level, Zheng would step it up and Pavlyuchenkova would lose. It happened at the end of that first set, happened twice in the second set as well, that Zheng would go a break up, it would get back, and then she'd just break again. So yeah, like a really impressive start from Zheng against someone I thought could have been a dangerous opponent, but she handled it really, really well.
There was a moment this evening when Matt and I were debating whether the podcast was going to end up being titled, "Are we overestimating Jasmine Paolini?" Because the fourth seed, the Rome champion, last year's finalist, was in serious trouble out on Lenglen this evening. She was down a break in the deciding set against China's Yuan Yui, who was playing out of her mind and seemed to have that sort of slow heart rate thing going on, where she was just tough as nails in the big moments. And Paolini just produced this tidal wave surge to win the final four games and clinch the match. And, you know, this diminutive little thing producing so much energy, you know, just bending this match to her will in those final 4 games, with the Lenglen crowd going nuts. It was a pretty incredible thing. She could have lost this. She really could have lost this match.
And a lot of people tend to look at men's tennis comebacks at Grand Slams, maybe from 2 sets to love down, as the more impressive feat. But actually, it's those sort of comebacks that I think really require some attention, because you've got so little time left. You know, she's coming to this tournament as the Rome champion, as one of the... You know, we've finally put her in a mix. And here she is, heading towards the exit on day 1 of the tournament, and she's got so little time to sort something out. How you don't panic and end up just making it worse, I don't know. But that's not her, is it? It's dig in, make every ball, make her play, and find that energy, find that little something that she has, Jasmine Paolini, and all credit to her. I mean, I don't like to be biased, but I'm really happy that she's still in the tournament.
Yeah, it was like a power surge. It was unbelievable out there. On the same court, Aryna Svitolina was the first winner of the tournament. She was scheduled first on Lenglen today, 2 breadsticks against Zeynep Sonmez. David, you were there for first ball on Lenglen, of course.
Of course. I was sat 2 rows behind the coach of the Turkish player, and he was getting very excited when she got a game. But the truth is, you saw the levels there. I mean, she hit the ball well, but Svitolina hits the ball well and has a real plan as to how she's going to break you down, and she looked good.
David is just drawn to Lenglen. It's absolutely fascinating. You're just like in its gravitational pull.
Correct.
You know, like there was discussion about the order of play. Like, is that a good enough order of play on Lenglen for day 1? You know, where's our really fun Frenchman with the crowd? And David was considering, maybe I'll just wait until I have a perfect first Lenglen experience. And he was like, nope, I'm going to go for first ball in the front row and watch Svitolina, because that sounds great too.
On my own.
When the order of play for tomorrow came out, I was obviously focusing on the predictably egregious sexism of it, and Dave was like, what are you talking about, artifices on Lenglen? Shut up.
I'm going to spend the whole day in order to get my seat at the end of the day.
It's so great.
I tell you who else is great. Victoria Mboko. I know we knew this. Matt Futterman's been telling us this, but we kind of got a taste of her for the first time today, and we were not disappointed. She beat Lulu Sun 6-1, 7-6, and she now plays Ava Lees, who we will also talk about in a moment. But first, some flowers for Victoria Mboko, who is... I'm so invested now, David.
Yeah, well, I could tell by the WhatsApp group. There were lots of exclamation marks after backhand winners, and that was when I was on my way to the court, because you were watching in the media centre there on the TV, and I got there and she was already 6-1, and it was about 2-2 in the second set against Lulu Sun, and suddenly Lulu Sun started to play well, and I'm standing on sort of back balcony looking over there at the court, and there was about a 12-minute game at 2-3 down for Mboko, where she's in a 10-juice game, and she fought off about 5 break points in that game, and she did it with everything, you know, because Lulu Sun was playing so well. She did it with guts, she did it with persistence and consistency and tenacity, but she also did it with just massive power, huge hitting, and there was a moment where, actually, when she got to match point, where she just puts the hammer down on the serve, and then she hit an inside-out backhand winner, just a cold winner. And, you know, this is a player with a serve that has a sound to it. You know, it's one of those that you're aware that is just proper power. And she was great in the press conference room as well, I thought. We were both in there, Catherine. Yeah.
I've developed 2 new favourite players on day 1 of Roland Garros 2025, and unfortunately they're playing one another in round 2. Bit of a disaster for me, because Mboko's playing Ava Lees, who beat everyone's dark horse seemingly on the women's side, Peyton Stearns, today. Incredible win for Ava Lees. Peyton Stearns obviously hasn't been the same since she was doorstepped by David.
It's the end of a very funny bit, isn't it? A couple of weeks ago we had Ghost of Gerolitis commenting on our YouTube show persistently that Peyton Stearns is going to win the French Open. Laughed it off as absolutely insane. She then goes and beats Keys, Osaka and Svitolina in final set tiebreaks in Rome and has this sort of historic run there to the semi-finals. Incredible. Then David doorsteps her. Like, Peyton Stearns we're just thinking and talking about Peyton Stearns all the time, and I go out and watch her first round match and she's 6-love, 2-love down to Ava Lees, who's a really, really good player. And Stearns just didn't have it today. Like, just the game was nothing like it was in Rome. Error-ridden. Her attitude probably wasn't what she needed.
She
or
didn't look like a
desired out
morning
there.
person to me.
I
know a fellow one of those when I see one.
I kind of just thought like Peyton Stearns was ready for a competitive contest any time of the day. Like, just wasn't there. Lees was clever. She was really changing the direction so well on her shots and not allowing the pattern of a forehand to forehand exchange to develop, because Stearns definitely would have benefited from those. But Lees is really clever in those rallies and absolutely deserved to win. A match that was largely played in pretty driving rain as well. You know, it was wet this morning. I thought it was going to get postponed at various points, but yeah, an impressive win for Lees and the conclusion of one of my favourite bits that we've had in recent times with Peyton Stearns.
Matt, you've followed Lees a little more closely than I have in recent times, because she was on your fantasy team, of course, and she scored you some very big, very unexpected points.
Yeah, and I picked her to be on my fantasy team because I liked watching her play, and she beat Anisimova at Wimbledon qualifying last year. We watched that. We were really impressed by her. She then had that incredible run in Australia, getting to the fourth round as a lucky loser. But yes, regrettable for me that Peyton Stearns remains on my fantasy team and Ava Lees it does not.
How good can she be, in your opinion? Because I'm suddenly invested in her being a really big deal. I want her to be as big a deal as possible. She's at a career high of 59 in the world right now. That was her first Roland Garros main draw win. Like, she's 23. We're not talking like late bloomer territory here, but she's not a teenager. And actually, that age I find particularly interesting, because if you're 23 now, you were 18 when COVID hit, there or thereabouts. And I do wonder if there's a data study to be done on that age group of players who were disrupted at such a formative, critical, transitional stage of their career. And Ava Lees not only had COVID hit, as we all did in 2020, but that was also the year, we learned today via a piece that our German colleague Yannick Schneider did with her for Eurosport, and that we asked her about in the press conference. It was also the year she was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called spondyloarthritis, which causes chronic lower back pain and inflammation. And she said, I asked her about it in the press conference today, and could not have been a better conversation. Like, I could have talked to her about it all afternoon, really, because I've got my own lower back issues, she said it's taken a few years, really the past 5 years, to learn how to calibrate her training and her pain management because of this condition. And she says she's had a great doctor with her throughout, like the same doctor she's had since she was a kid. And she said if it wasn't for that doctor, she could have been at risk of really kind of mentally spiraling about it. She said he really reassured me that if we do this right, then it doesn't need to hold you back. But doing it right is a big part of her life. There are periods when she has no choice but to rest. She's constantly having to assess where the boundary is and where the trade-off is between a training session that could improve her form or a technique, but could also cost her in the longer run. And she's brilliant. How good can she be?
Well, I think the autoimmune disorder is an important element of that conversation. I think there's absolutely no doubt about it that it is, to some degree, holding her back or gonna hold her back. Like, she can't, as you said, she can't train in the same ways that a lot of these top players are training. She's finally learning ways to bring the absolute best out of herself. But she spoke about if she does push it when she gets these flare-ups, and then she can't do anything for 5 or 6 days. And she's done so incredibly well to reach a point now, I think, where she can manage it. And from here, I definitely think she can be even higher than she's currently got to. I think there are some limitations in her game. Her serve is not particularly big. It's quite attackable. And the forehands, there's just a lot of better forehands on the tour.
So she's got a good backhand.
But then I was talking to Yannick Schneider about this, and he said, well, we used to say the same about Angelique Kerber. Can't really serve and has a bit of a weakness on the forehand. And I think it's a different game generally, but I think the sort of example of Angelique Kerber just is a reminder, like, never properly write someone off. And Stern's Lise absolutely is coming into the best portion of her career right now. Yannick said that he thinks if she can just be a consistent top 50 player, pushing up towards around 30, he sees that would be a real achievement for her career, given everything that she kind of has to experience, and some of those limitations. But there are great parts to her game too, and I'd absolutely love it if she can be that consistent, in every draw. Just Ava Lise is in the draw and is going to beat some players along the way. That would be great, because, as you said, we'd then hear from her more.
Yeah.
And she's fantastic
in
press conferences.
Lise,
You do. If there's an important issue, she will speak on it, and she will say something really interesting on it as well. So if we can just get Ava Lise to be that player, then that would be fantastic, I think, for the sport.
Yeah, agreed. Ukrainian parents, I hadn't realised that until...
Speaks so many languages.
So many languages. English completely fluently. Speaking of Ukrainians, by the way, Marta Kostyuk got taken apart earlier by the Czech teenage qualifier Sara Bejlik. She hasn't come into press yet, Kostyuk, and I will be seeking out the quotes when she does, because I do wonder if there was something going on here. She looked fit to me from what I saw of this match, but she looked anguished and exhausted. So I do wonder if there's a story there, but Sara Bejlik was unreal. She's got some chutzpah about it. Her one of those low centre of gravity, incredible angles. She's a lefty, just gets low into the court and drives through the ball. And you're like, whoa, where's that come from? I don't want to take anything away from her, but I do wonder if there's a bit of a story there, because it was so one-sided, and Kostyuk looked in sort of state of despair at points during this match. Donna Vekic needed a big reset after losing the second set, a Pam Shriver reset, to come back and win in 3 against Anna Blinkova. Good win for Donna Vekic there, who's had a tough few weeks and months. Then Schneider looked to be in a spot of bother in a really weird match against the qualifier Anastasia Sobolyeva. 7-6, 6-2 she won Schneider, despite seemingly turning her ankle quite badly at the end of the first set, and then kind of improving from that point onwards.
Yeah, it was a very strange match, because she was 5-love up in the first set. Like, she never should have been in that situation where she was, in a first set tie break. She just... I think when it goes for Schneider. I think we saw that against Paolini in Rome, where she just suddenly couldn't find the court, couldn't make a ball, and that kind of happened again here. I think maybe a little bit of scar tissue has formed from that Rome match. But yes, she's then suddenly down in that first set and rolls her ankle, gets her foot stuck in the clay, all her weight goes on it. She's Yeah, it's a really horrible fall. She's immediately in tears at the net, has a long medical timeout, gets it taped, and lost the first 3 points after the restart. And I was thinking, oh God, no, she can't move. But actually, she then broke back and came alive in the tie-break, hit an absolutely stunning forehand pass on the run at one stage in that. And yeah, maybe a little bit like we talked about yesterday. It was kind of like the injury got her out of that sort of bad moment she was in where she'd lost 6 games in a row, and then she maybe freed up a bit and played a lot better after it. As you said, I would be worried about what it might be tomorrow, that ankle. I mean, that was a bad roll. Definitely affected her. So bit worried about the rest of her tournament, but an impressive win nonetheless.
Petra Kvitova, the last really notable women's result to bring you. She lost in 3 sets to Victoria Golubic. Kind of same pattern as most of her matches since coming back. Decent start, and then a real physical fade from her. So she's still struggling for fitness on her comeback trail. That is it for the women's matches today. We'll be back in part 3 with the men's and with a look ahead to tomorrow. Welcome back to part 3 of the tennis podcast on day 1 of Roland Garros. And let's be honest, it was slightly slim pickings on the men's side today, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, to be honest, to some degree, all the way around, I feel today it was. It was
a soft launch for Roland Garros.
It was, yeah, it was, and I think that just happens sometimes, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know. What were your highlights? Can you think of one that really stands out on the men's side? Because I must admit, I only really watched the women's matches and the Nadal ceremony today, really.
For a set, Elmer Moller and Tommy Paul was fun. It got not that fun pretty quickly, and suddenly felt really inevitable very quickly. 6-7, 6-2, 6-3, 6-1. This for Tommy Paul over on Simone Mathieu, the first match of the day over there, and they had about 8 different kinds of weather throughout the course of this match. It was so windy. There was rain. There was intermittent sunshine. It was quite cold at times. It was really a lot going on, and it was a very unusual match in that there was a significant forehand deficit to backhand on both sides of the net. It's not unheard of in men's tennis that a player has a stronger backhand than forehand, but pretty unusual to have both players with such a strong imbalance in favour of the backhand. And there were some great backhands today and some really ugly forehands.
Tommy Paul seemed quite amused by Elmer Moller's backhand, the way he was moving around the forehand to be able to hit inside-out backhands. I just don't think you've seen that before.
Yeah, I think that was what made the first set so interesting, because it forced Tommy Paul to change what he usually does, because Tommy Paul is usually one of the players who I think backs himself in backhand rallies. You know, he's got a lovely backhand that he leans on. He hits it very flat. His forehand technique is a bit susceptible, Tommy Paul, but
it was today.
Yeah, but it forced him to change what he was doing. You know, he was getting himself involved in forehand to forehand exchanges, which he doesn't normally want to be doing. But because I think he was a little bit intimidated at times by the Moller backhand. The thing that really stands out to me on that shot, the Moller backhand, is his ability to punish balls with no pace. Normally, players put away balls with no pace with their forehand. You know, that's the stroke where they can generate the racket head speed and just thrash a winner away with the forehand. But Moller does it off the backhand, and he's much more comfortable doing it. If it's just there to be hit, he just puts all of his body into it and puts it away. It's really impressive the way he generates pace off no pace on the backhand. And it was a fun first set, went to a tie break. Paul had a mini break. Moller got it back and won the set on a forehand, in fact. But it was kind of like He only really had that set in him to be able to trouble a really, really top player like Paul. And I think by the end, Moller had some injury problems as well, and it did become a lot less fun. But for a set, I agree with you. I really enjoyed that first one. I went over there after watching the first set of Lise Stearns.
The Tommy Paul truck saga has definitively reached its conclusion. He confirmed today that he has got the truck back, and I don't think he suffered any repercussions. He insists that it was all a misunderstanding. He said he switched banks. He's now with Goldman Sachs, there's some detail. And he forgot to switch his auto pay on the truck payments. And he therefore missed 3 payments. And he only discovered the truck had been towed, repossessed, essentially, temporarily repossessed, because he was checking his cameras on his house to see if he had any packages delivered for his fitness trainer who lives around the corner to go and collect for him so they didn't get nicked. And he went to check his camera and he was like, there's no packages, but there's also no truck. So that was some nice detail. Still totally in the dark about why multi-millionaire 7 times over, career prize money today $11.5 million plus endorsements, Tommy Paul, was paying for a Ford truck in instalments, presumably paying significant interest on it.
Truly baffling.
We know that it was a Ford F-150. Now, it was a busy day today, but I found time. You found time in your day for Rafael Nadal, Matt. I found time in my day to go on the Ford website and see how much one of these might set me back.
You pimped it up on the Ford website.
Yeah, well, I thought, what is the maximum this can possibly have cost multi-millionaire Tommy Paul? Okay, so the most expensive version of that car was a Raptor. Now, that costs, in the most souped-up version, including an ash cup with lighter, a cover, a unique set of 17-inch forged aluminium beadlock-capable wheels, and a 5.2-litre supercharged V8 engine. That'll set you back $115,950. Look, it's not a cheap car. I'd be needing to put that on credit.
Just a bit.
But I wouldn't expect Tommy Paul to be doing that. Or should we be worried about his solvency?
He's got it under control. It's back.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't seem worried, but I am on his behalf. He thinks the saga is over, but for me, questions remain.
Yeah, so many questions. I hear this story and I think I really hope that someone else in Tommy Paul's life is organising his anti-doping.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he's missing tests, isn't he? Right? I just hope. I mean, presumably he has, because he hasn't, to my knowledge, well, he certainly hasn't got a doping ban or anything, but I just hope there's people.
I'm not sure he can afford people, Matt. I was going to say maybe he's got PA, but yeah. Lorenzo Musetti beat Yannick Hanfmann on Chatrier today, 7-5, 6-2, 6-love, described by David as a dissection, which I love.
He's an artist, is Musetti. He's one of the few players that can win a match without any sort of jeopardy, and it's still hugely enjoyable because he's just so fun to watch, such a glorious sight when he's got time. The thing is, when he plays maybe Sinner and Alcaraz, he doesn't have all that time. But what a player.
I'm sad he's changed kit.
Yeah, it was quite short-lived, the toga kit. It's fine, this new kit, but it's just a kit, isn't it?
It's just not what it was.
Lorenzo Sonego and Ben Shelton is ongoing right now and will probably be so for many hours.
Several hours.
We could be on for a post-midnight finish on the first day of the tournament, folks. Thomas Mahatch has retired, so lots of things just don't change. Quentin Lys, in fact, his opponent, walked past us a few moments ago. Poor old Thomas Mahatch did hit a jump forehand winner in the opening set, so he's he's given us something. Hope he's okay.
And David asked about highlights. I wasn't expecting my men's highlight of the day to be Mpetshi Perricard.
Yeah.
But actually...
No, you weren't. You said earlier there's only 2 matches happening at the moment because it was raining at the time, and one of them's Mpetshi Perricard. It's definitely time to go to lunch.
Yeah, I stand by it. And yet, vibes.
I'm a bit gutted, actually, because I kept planning to get out there for one of the 6-5 changeovers, and then something happened. Nadal's ceremony and all sorts of things were going on, and I couldn't make it.
Yeah, it was 5-love down in the third set tiebreak. You know, crucial moment of the match. 5-love down, Mpetshi Perricard, and he came back to win it. He hit 2 aces, bad forehand from Bergs in the net. Great pass from Mpetshi Perricard. Probably shouldn't have been allowed to hit it. Bergs probably should have put the volley away. Then 2 massive serves, massive forehands to get to set point from Mpetshi Perricard, and then a double fault from Bergs. So it was the classic 2 things going on. Bergs really letting it slip, and Mpetshi Perricard just absolutely hitting the top notes of his game. And there were scenes like. The crowd was so into it.
It was a vibe.
It was the best scenes of the day, I think.
David wasn't there.
And Charlie Accouchet put it well. It was just less linear than a normal Mpetshi Perricard match. It had moments, like even when he went to serve out the match, you thought, okay, this is over. But it actually got broken, and then he broke again. You know, it just had those twists and turns that you don't always
You're
get.
rubbing it in now.
I've got good news. I bring good news about tomorrow, David. Tomorrow is going to make up for it for you.
Excellent.
This is what tomorrow looks like. On Chatre, starting at midday local time, Rebecca Shramkova against Iga Swiatek, the defending champion. Then it is Naomi Osaka against Paula Badosa. Then, once the women are out of the way, enter Richard Gasquet and Terence Atman.
I think I can find something else to do during that. No, I mean, I don't mean to be mean, but...
There's going to be probably going to be a Gasquet ceremony after the Nadal ceremony, isn't there?
Yeah.
Which is entirely fitting.
And then in the night session, it's Artur Rinderknecht. Will he do a scorpion kick?
I hope so.
And then get his feet out and then retire? That's what he did last year, wasn't it? Scorpion kick, blisters, retirement.
And the year before, he got involved in tremendous aggro with Taylor Fritz.
Yes, leading to have a safe flight home.
Yeah. So I somehow doubt that'll happen against Sinner. But it is, like, the small point on this is obviously Sinner received an amazing reception back in Rome, as expected. Will he receive such a good reception here in France against a Frenchman? Will they want a villain out there and make a thing of Yannick Sinner? I don't think so. I think for most people it's hard to hate Yannick Sinner. And I think he'll probably just win quite easily, and there won't be that much for the crowd to get into. But it's a small element of the match that is intriguing to me.
Wear all black again, Yannick. Lean into it. Be Johnny Cash. Lenglen tomorrow starts with Jessica Buthas Monero against Emma Navarro. Then Zeppieri. What's his first name? G. I'm going to go Giovanni. Oh, it's Giulio. Giulio Zeppieri against Carlos Alcaraz. Alcaraz starting his campaign on Lenglen. That's not unheard of. I remember Nadal once started as defending champion on Lenglen. I think he'd rather play Lenglen day session than... I think he'd rather play anywhere day session than Chatre night session.
Right in front of me.
Third on is potentially Caroline Garcia's last French Open match. She takes on Bernarda Pera. And then finally on Lenglen tomorrow, David, it is Nicolas Jarry against Arthur Fils.
I cannot wait.
Mathieu tomorrow, Casper Ruud taking on Albert Ramos Vignelas. Daniel Altmaier against Taylor Fritz. Katie Bolter against C. Monet. Claude Carroll.
Claude
Monet.
I know, but
it's spelt differently. You get it. Katie Bolter against Carol Monet, the French qualifier, and then finally Madison Keys and the Aussie qualifier Darius Saville. Court 14 is where you find Elena Rybakina tomorrow. Also, Stan Wawrinka, former champion, is third on court 14 tomorrow. Ugo Humbert is there. That could be a vibe against Chris O'Connell. Although Ugo Humbert isn't a vibe here, is he?
Well, he tries to be. I remember watching him against Sonego on Lenglen last year, and he was really trying to do the sort of fist pumps and get the crowd going, but he really didn't look very comfortable doing it. And before you know it, Sonego's kind of taken over that vibe himself, because that's the type of fella he is.
Court 7 tomorrow is where you find Holger Rune. Wonder if he'll post a helpful map to that court online for his fans. Hugo Gaston is first on court 7 tomorrow, and he's taking on a fellow Frenchman, which I reckon he's pretty unhappy about. Right, the French don't want to be playing other French here. They want the crowd entirely on their side. And of course, Gaston is no, I've got that wrong. It's Mute that can potentially face Djokovic in round 2, isn't it? Need that match to happen. Krejcikova, former champion Barbora Krejcikova, also on court 7 tomorrow. Doubt she's happy about that court assignment either.
And Tsitsipas, I saw, is out on court 6,
Wow.
which, you know, maybe isn't that surprising in the moment, but I'd be shocked if he's played many matches here away from Chatrier and Lenglen
Potentially
in the last few years.
Former finalist Tsitsipas is going to be on court 6, whilst Terence Atman and Richard Gasquet are on Chatrier. Emma Raducanu is first on court 8 tomorrow. Daniel Collins is also on court 8. Tomorrow is a proper Grand Slam day, isn't it? Grand Slam round 1 day. It's going to feel like it tomorrow.
Can't wait.
Definitely is for David. Folks, we have a mascot for today's show. That mascot is Clara, who is owned by Steph, Theo and Max. Clara is a 2-year-old rescue from Louisiana. She was adopted as a puppy, and she's now a big sister to human baby Maxine. Oh, Max loves Clara, and Clara tries to keep her anxieties in check on behalf of her. Everyone is looking forward to our home tournament, the City Open. We'd love to see the pod in Washington. I would like to come to Washington as well. The humidity does concern me, but it looks like a wonderful city. Maybe I'll visit outside of tournament time. Clara is absolutely lovely. I wonder, let us know, Steph, whether you've done one of those dog DNA tests. Although I actually do have doubts over their accuracy. But I would like to know what a dog DNA test would say about Clara's heritage. I reckon there's maybe a bit of Labrador in there, possibly a bit of Beagle. David's looking at me blankly. But a whole lot of loveliness, Steph. Clara she's just dictionary definition of dog, I would say. Lovely stuff. There you go. You're both looking at me like I'm an alien.
Just enjoying
I don't think I am.
hearing about
Great
Clara.
dog. More dogs. Hello to Phoebe. Hello to Maisie. Hello to Roger. Hello to our executive producers and top folks, not dogs, Greg, Chris and Jeff. And over to Matt for shout-outs.
I think what I might have been doing is figuring out how I'm going to pronounce this first shout-out. We have had Jasper before. Jasper Vandendriesche.
Oh, what a name.
That sounds right up my alley pronunciation-wise.
From a small town near Bruges in Belgium.
So we'll assume that's a Flemish name.
And Jasper says that he thoroughly enjoyed tennis relived on the 2005 Australian Open that we did back in January for friends.
I enjoyed that too.
Yeah.
The Safin backhand.
Yeah, Serena Williams winning the title. It's a good one, that.
Thank you, Jasper. Jasper's an excellent name, isn't it? Don't think there are tennis Jaspers. Will you settle for Jesper de Jong?
That's all I was thinking of. Similar, isn't it?
Please
Written
accept
down.
Jesper de Jong with our apologies, Jasper, and thank you.
We've also got Dorinda.
Hello, Dorinda.
Hi, Dorinda.
Dorinda Bonanno,
Oof, that's a good name.
who is originally from Melbourne but now lives in Connecticut.
Hey.
Are you going to do it, Catherine?
That we've driven through Connecticut.
Dorinda says, you keep mentioning driving through Connecticut.
Until I have another Connecticut-based experience, Dorinda, that is what I'll be mentioning.
Well, Dorinda's provided us with a fact.
Okay.
Did you know that Connecticut is home to the first hamburger Polaroid camera, helicopter, and colour television. Just saying.
Gotta love the fact that Dorinda's come with her own facts, and they're better than ours. Super.
I can't argue with that. Dorinda doesn't need to hear the story about me being refused use of the toilets in a Connecticut Dunkin' Donuts again. Thank you, Dorinda.
And finally, we have Yolanda Baron.
Hello, Yolanda.
Hi, Yolanda.
Who was born in Barcelona, grew up in Mexico City, and now lives in New Jersey.
Oh.
Hey.
And Yolanda says, like Yolanda Ramirez, twice a finalist at the French Open. And also a doubles champion here in the 60s.
Brilliant.
And Yolanda came to our New York live show last year.
I was just going to say, shout out New Jersey folk to hopefully come to our New York live show this year. August 21st, save the date. Details coming soon. Please come back, Yolanda. We've got a bigger boat this time.
Yes, and Yolanda says that she later met us, Catherine, at the US Open after the match between Zheng Qinwen and Amanda Anisimova. Matt was very disappointed that Anisimova had lost.
I think I remember that moment, actually.
Definitely checks out.
Yeah. Yolanda, thank you. You've done our work for us, which is most lovely. And I actually have one additional shout out, if I may bend the rules. That shout out is for Chrissy Hunter. Hello, Chrissy. And Chrissy is the mum of the wonderful Vicky Spreadbury, who we work with every day now and has genuinely changed our lives. And Vicky's mum, Chrissy, is feeling a bit under the weather at the moment. And she listens to the show, so we wanted to send her best wishes and deepest thanks for bringing Vicky into the world. You have got a diamond of a daughter there, Chrissy. Honestly, a diamond. I know you know that, but there it is.
Yeah, genuinely changed our lives this year. I can't believe there was a time that we did a tennis podcast without Vicky. Just the best.
Yeah, get well soon, Chrissy.
And get well soon.
Get well soon, Chrissy. The Tennis Podcast is proudly part of the Athletic Podcast Network. And there is one last bit of business today, something that the listeners have been hanging on for the past hour. The final instalment of the big saga. Matt Roberts versus Amanda Anisimova reached its conclusion today, folks. This is the moment you have all been waiting for.
I can't do an interview with you and not talk about your backhand. The listeners to our show know that it's my favourite shot in the sport. I've always wondered, like, how does it feel to hit that shot?
Yeah, I mean, it feels good. It's one of my favorite shots, backhand down line. So, yeah, I try and use it, try and go for it. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of my weapons, so it definitely feels good when it's on.